It is February the 6th and slightly past 5 p.m. It's more like 5:30, whatever. We were delayed in the chamber earlier today and things got pushed back, but I note the presence of a quorum, and I'm going to ask Senator Harbin if he would open our meeting with prayer. What mic is that, Mark?
Number 12, sir.
Senator Harbin. Well, thank you, Senator.
All right. Thank you. Let's pray. Lord, we thank you for the day. We thank you for your faithfulness to us. We ask that you would give us wisdom and discernment for the people of Georgia, and Father, that we would honor you in all that we do. And we'll thank you in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Senator. Ladies and gentlemen, we have three bills on the agenda this afternoon. We're going to adjust the order a bit because we're going to allow Senator Williams to present first SB 411 and then present Senate Resolution 454. And then finally, we're going to consider SB 367, but SB 367 will be hearing only. We'll not take any action on that bill today. So let's begin, if you don't mind, Senator, if you would present for us Senate Bill 411, and you're welcome to do it from your desk, or you're welcome to do it from whichever place is most comfortable.
It's very comfortable right here, so I'll just do it here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, committee. I come before you with Senate Bill 411. This is a lot of times they say we don't have common sense up here at the Capitol, but this is one that kind of common sense bill. A lot of people don't know it, but I was a single parent. When I got custody of my children, they were 11, 10, and 6. They were boy, girl, boy. Where I went, they went. Where they went, I went. And I've stood in the grocery store line and other lines with my children. And I had a good friend over on the other side that we worked together on this bill, and we think it's a good common sense bill. But this bill allows people with small children or people with elderly or handicapped to move through the line and go ahead and vote. Stops disruption of voting and helps the elderly and handicapped and the children. And I know we've all sat in church and we've heard the crying baby and thought, we love babies, but why don't they take the baby on and take care of the baby? So this is that common sense bill of not having the children be uncomfortable. And especially one thing we might, and I'm going to ask legal counsel when the time's right to make sure that if someone shows up with a child in a wheelchair, even though the child might not be a minor, would this allow that person with that child in the wheelchair to go ahead around the line and go ahead and vote? Mr. Chairman, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, Senator. I open it up for the committee for discussion. Any questions for the author? Any questions for the author? I see one or two. I recognize the senator from Savannah, down I-16. Is that correct, Senator?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman. I just want to verify the LC number that the author is presenting from to ensure that I'm reading from the correct bill. If we could do that, I would appreciate it greatly.
My understanding is it's LC 472616. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you. Senator from the mountains.
This would allow most of our congressional members to skip the line, wouldn't it?
It's
It's 75 and older
if
part.
their parents are with them. Is that right? Okay. Thank you for that.
Will allow you.
Thank you for that. Let's see, Senator Robertson. Nope, I'm sorry, the leader. Then I back on. All right.
I'm ready to make a motion that you're,
Well, let's take a moment or two and allow for public input.
all right?
All right, and I'd see one more question.
Quick question. So if someone has 3 or 4 children under 5 years of age, they also can take advantage of this as well. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
How many
Yeah, you'll be good.
How many do you have, sir?
He's got 7 right now, but but today is young.
I I would be remiss if I did not recognize Representative Draper. I believe that she has some similar legislation in the House. Is that not true, Representative? It is true. Good. Now, I'd like to, if you'd like, be happy to let you speak to this bill, or we appreciate your presence. Thank you. Do I have any public comment on SB 411? Is there anyone who'd like to speak for or against this bill? If you would please identify yourself and let us know who you are.
Hello, gentlemen. How y'all doing?
We're good.
Little lady. Mr. Chairman, thank you so much for an opportunity to speak to you, and thank you, committee, for hearing me. I am Monica Wills Brown, and I am with the League of Women Voters of Georgia, and I am a proud member of the Marietta Cobb chapter of the League of Women Voters. I'll be short and sweet because this bill is short and sweet. And just the support of children and families, and the similar measures added families with children to the line exceptions. Many parents have no option but to take, and I'm a mother, have no option but to take their children with them to the polls. And it's an opportunity to teach civics as we, as we're moving, because that's something we definitely need in this day and time. We know the best way to teach children is to model the behaviors we expect of them when they become adults. And most importantly, adults who understand the importance of voting and being civically active. We applaud efforts to make it easier for caretakers to vote with your children in tow. So thank you for your time and attention to this matter, and we appreciate what you do for the state of Georgia. Thank you.
Thank you for your input. We have an individual on Zoom. Let's go there next. Ann Gray Herring, is that right? Is Ms. Herring available? There you are.
Yes. Hi there. I'm Ann Gray Herring. This is Charlotte. And I
Oh,
could not be there in person to testify because I've got Charlotte with me this evening. And I just wanted to say, I frequently testify for voting rights bills, through my work, but just as a parent, I do appreciate the common sense measure of this bill, because as important voting is to me, I know if she was having a meltdown in the voting line, we would have to exit whether I got to the front to vote or not. So we definitely support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you for your input. Ms. Herring is with Common Cause Georgia, and they support the bill. Is Ms. Lassinger here? ACLU?
Hello, good evening. My name is Rachel Lastinger, and I'm the Associate Director of the Voter Access Project for the ACLU of Georgia. And the Voter Access Project works to ensure that all Georgia voters have easy access to the ballot and that voting is uncomplicated. And so I'm here to speak in support of SB 411. SB 411 greatly increases voter access for voters with young children under their care and voters living with a disability by providing them with preferential access during advanced voting and on election day. All voters deserve the right to cast their ballot via their preferred method. And while mail-in voting is a great option for Georgia voters, we know many prefer to vote in person. And in fact, advanced in-person voting is the preferred method of voters in Georgia. So SB 411 provides for greater access for voters who are unable to wait in long lines and prefer to vote in person. So we are in support of it.
Thank you for your input. We appreciate that. We'll move quickly through the others who have signed up. Ms. Lee, Jennifer Lee, Asian Americans Advancing Justice. Is Ms. Lee available? All right, we have a guest, Ms. Lee. Welcome.
You. Yes, I am with Asian Americans Advancing Justice Atlanta, but I'm also a Georgia voter.
Yes.
This is my daughter Mina. She will turn 2 in April. And I also have another daughter who's in kindergarten. I have voted with her in person, early voting and absentee. And I just thank you very much for bringing this measure forward. We all know that life can just be challenging sometimes with young kids, even though it's very joyful as well. So we appreciate your support of parents who are trying to vote with their kids in Georgia.
What is her?
Mina.
Mina.
Yeah, she's here.
We're glad you brought bananas to everyone here. That's great.
So thank you for accommodating her as well in this evening.
We're glad she's here. We're glad you're here.
All
Thank
right,
you.
Thank you.
You know, I am grateful for those who are here who speak positively about this bill. I appreciate the senator bringing it and the representative bringing it on the other side of the Capitol. You know, sometimes we have some challenges, but this is something I think we can work together on effectively. Joey McKinnon, Georgia Values Act. Is Mr. McKinnon here?
Thank you, Chair. I'm Joey McKinnon with Georgia Values Action. We work on behalf of Georgia working families and economic opportunity. We take a real narrow focus in regard to elections bills like this one to simply make sure that voting is accessible so that working families are better represented. When we talk to our network about voting, they want it to be accessible. And for that reason, we support this bill. I think this bill is needed now because so many more workers have transitioned to working remotely in recent years. I'm one of them. We had a weather day at my kid's school this year, and believe me, as a single dad, it was not my most productive day. So if you have children under 5, you're so much more impacted in these situations. My daughter's 7, she's at soccer, so she's not here with us today, but I've taken her to every election. And so while I won't get additional support outlined in this bill, which is a bummer, I do know how much that can mean between making the decision to vote in the middle of work shifts, traffic, and juggling childcare. So we appreciate the extra level of care laid out for parents. Thank you.
Thank you for your input. Ms. Crawford, Natalie Crawford, Georgia First.
Thank you, Chairman. We too want to thank you for bringing this bill. I'm the Executive Director of Georgia First. We're a conservative think tank nonprofit here in Georgia. I too was a single mom, a single parent when my kids were young. It really can make the difference between making the time to go and cast your vote when you know that you can move through swiftly and not be a disruption to others. You know, this bill celebrates, I think, a time-honored value, Georgia value of respecting our elders, respecting our disabled and our young children. Again, appreciate anything that you can do that helps increase accessibility, especially for our working families. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And finally, Ms. Neighbors, Christine Neighbors, are you available? All voting is local.
Well, I'm going to keep it super short and sweet. Sorry.
It's okay. We need you.
I'm happy to just waive my remarks. I just want to thank the senator for bringing this bill forward. It's an excellent bill. We fully support it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. That concludes all testimony from the public on this. Any further questions from the committee?
On the record that someone thanked Senator Williams for an election.
Absolutely. That might be the only option he gets in the near term, but we'll see. We're now ready to entertain a motion. I recognize the leader.
Thank you, Chairman. I make a motion to pass Senate Bill 411, it's LC number 472616.
Have a motion. Is there a second? Second. Come over here to Mr. Inventarte, Senator Inventarte. All those in favor of SB 411 indicate with the uplifted hand. I see unanimous support. Thank you. That's 7-0. Thank you, Senator. Congratulations on that bill. We're going to move along now to Senate Resolution, 454. And I will again defer to the Vice Chairman to present Senate Resolution 454. I believe that's LC 472678. The right to register and vote. Clarification.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Here again is, and you also have a, paper with that bill from the, Office of Policy and Legislative Analysis. Most states have laws that prevent non-citizens from voting, but as we all know, laws can be changed. Laws can be changed very easily. And the inherent right to vote as a citizen of the state of Georgia, I feel we need to protect. This bill and this paper shows that no states explicitly allow non-citizens to vote in elections at any level, but some localities allow non-citizen voting in certain elections. San Francisco, California allows non-citizen parents to vote in school board elections. Vermont cities of Burlington, Vermont, Winooski, and Montpelier approve separate measures so legal residents can vote in local elections. Several cities in Maryland also allow non-citizens to vote in local elections. And there are several towns, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And the list could expand. This is for a resolution to go on the ballot in November that would prevent any non-citizen from being able to vote in the state of Georgia. And I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Questions from the committee? Senator, from Tyrone, Georgia.
Thank you.
Tyrone.
Thank you.
His middle name.
Yes, okay. And in reading this, my question, is it currently identification is done with driver's license and with state issued ID? And the
That-
bill, as I read it, says only individuals who, in line 8 and 9, only individuals who are citizens of the United States, that understood there, and a resident of Georgia. Does the word resident of Georgia, rather than a citizen of Georgia, I'm asking the question, is that, should they be a citizen versus a resident so that they could be a citizen of let's say, Alabama, come across state lines? And as I'm reading this, should that be citizen is a question I have.
I think that's a legislative council question.
I didn't mean to keep them in work. Yeah.
Chair recognizes, Ledge Council. Mr. Morel.
So residents of the state is the term that is, that is the proper legal terminology. You are a citizen of the United States and you are a resident of the state you live in. The idea of state citizenship is kind of an older feature, but in common and modern law, you are a resident of the state, you reside in, and that is what all of our election laws are based off of, residency in the state if you are a citizen of the United States.
So you're comfortable with the current language, is that correct?
Yes, sir. I mean, the current language is really just up. I mean, the change here is it's just a change in style. The current constitution already does provide that, residents of the state.
But am I correct that still you are required either to have a driver's license and then or a state issued ID in order to be able to vote? Is that my understanding? Under state law?
There is in general a ID requirement, but there are provisions for people, I believe, who do not have IDs.
Do you know whether or not a driver's license determines citizenship? Or can you get a driver's license without citizenship?
While non-citizen residents of Georgia could get an ID card, I believe the process of when a person goes to register to vote requires proof not only of residency, but of citizenship. So a person should not be able to register to vote if they can't prove their citizenship as well as their residency.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Senator from the second.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Seeing that this resolution would require a 2/3 majority coming to the floor of the Senate and or House, I do have grave issue with line 11 that says meet minimum residency requirements as provided by law, shall be entitled to vote in any election by the people. Now, because I'm in the minority party, when that says law, that means the majority party can pass a law with 29 votes and make that the law. So before I vote for anything that's a constitutional amendment, I want to know how are we going to define what are the minimum residency requirements? If we're going to put it on the ballot for folks to vote on it, we ought to line out what the minimum requirements are to be a resident.
Author wish to respond?
That,
It's already existing, it is already defined in the existing law? Is that the
And
consensus?
and in code, And it's been the same under both parties for numbers of years.
Chair recognizes, I'll come back to you, Senator. Chair recognizes the majority leader.
I think if the senator from the second looks at the code there, that's already existing law. It's in the Constitution written that way unless it's underlined. So the underlined words are the new words that are being inserted or struck. So your concern has already been addressed way before today. So we don't have that code section open at this time, but it's pretty easy to find it.
Is it not true, Senator, that on line 10, we strike the word meets, and on line 11, we insert the word meet? That's more of a Scribner or
It's the plural versus.
plural versus singular.
Yeah.
So it's the same meaning. Again, I believe that what the author's intent is to ensure that only citizens of the United States vote in elections in Georgia. Is that correct, Senator?
That is correct.
Recognize the Senator from Augusta.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just had one question. Based on the fact that we are amending the current law, how would these amendments or changes ensure that now only persons who are citizens of the United States can vote any better than what we already have?
Well, the way it is right now, it's just law, and the laws, as I stated earlier, I'm no attorney. I know we have several attorneys on this board and a constitution expert on this board, which I appreciate him being here. It's just against the law for non-citizens to vote. This is making it tougher that municipalities could not pass an ordinance to allow non-residents to vote. And this is just a constitutional amendment. With the influx of people coming in, we want to make sure we preserve the elections and the integrity of elections.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Finally, the chair recognizes Senator from the second.
Absolutely. And while we're talking about this proposed constitutional amendment, be happy to support if we would allow the automatic restoration of voting rights for those individuals who have been incarcerated that have completed their sentences to automatically receive their right to vote and have that enshrined in state constitution. Be happy to support an amendment today to that effect, as they paid their debt to society and should be given the right back to vote. If we're only concerned about U.S. citizens having the right to vote, then those are returning citizens and should automatically be given that right back. If the author of the proposed resolution would be friendly to that amendment, I would be more than happy to support and vote on that today.
Those people can get their right to vote reinstated. All they do now in the procedure is when they have finished their sentence, paid their restitution from their probation officer, when they're released from probation and all the sentencing requirements have been met, they're given a letter and they take it to the voter registration office. And that just proves and gets them off that list, and they can reapply for their voting. So it's not a big issue and it's not a big deal. It's just a matter of procedure, and that's all it is.
Thank you, Senator. I recognize the senator from Columbus.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank Senator Williams for answering that question. We had a study committee held on that very issue a few years back, and we're able to say that once the sentence is completed, Georgia citizens are allowed to regain their right to vote. And when the time is right, Mr. Chair, I'll be ready.
I appreciate your input. One more question. Senator from Ghana.
Not to belabor the point, but so this is a constitutional amendment. This would not be where we would deal with an amendment to deal with the code when it comes to someone voting that's currently serving a sentence. In addition to that, Senate Bill 105 from 2 years ago that I carried dealt with early termination and of probation. And it's something everybody up here supported because it passed unanimously and provided a better pathway to let people get off probation earlier, that did all the things they're supposed to be doing, which also allows them to go and vote as well. So we have addressed that with some legislation in the last couple of years as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. I appreciate that input. I would note that if you look at lines 18 and 19, that's the ballot question. It's a straightforward ballot question. Yes or no, shall the Constitution of Georgia be amended so as to clarify that only citizens of the United States shall have the right to vote in elections in the state of Georgia? That's the ballot question. Now, we do have a couple of individuals who want to provide public input. We'd recognize them before we consider a motion. So again, I'd like to recognize Ms. Jennifer Lee, Asian American. Advancing Justice. Yes. She had to take that young lady home. She's okay? Yeah. All right, then what we can do is we can ask Ms. McGowan. Is Ms. McGowan here? Charlene McGowan, the Secretary of State's Office, General Counsel. We welcome you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will keep my remarks very brief. I just want to thank Vice Chairman Williams for supporting this measure. The Secretary of State strongly supports this measure. He has been an advocate for this for many years, but I think that in light of the current immigration crisis that we have and the crisis at the border, that it's very timely. And we would just encourage the committee to support this resolution and move it forward.
Thank you. Hold on. You have one question, Senator from the second, briefly.
Thank you so much. My question simply is, what does this resolution change that's already existing in Constitution, that's already paragraph 2 of the state constitution that says every person who is a citizen of the United States and resident of Georgia is defined by law who is at least 18 years of age and not disenfranchised by this article. Isn't that already law?
What the language of the Constitution reads that a U.S. citizen can vote in Georgia. It doesn't specifically say that a non-U.S. citizen cannot vote. So this is just clarifying that language. And as Senator Williams mentioned, there is a movement in certain municipalities and certain cities across the United States to encourage non-citizens to register to vote and also to vote. And so while it is a statutory requirement that voters be U.S. citizens and residents of Georgia, that requirement, applies to state and federal races, but we want to make sure that this is enshrined in the Constitution so that we can make sure that all of our elections moving forward, only citizens of the United States can vote.
Thank you, Ms. McGowan. We appreciate your input. And we'll move back briefly to Ms. Lee. Would you like to share your input on Senate Resolution 454?
Yes, and thank you again for accommodating me this evening. My name is Jennifer Lee, and I'm the Policy Director at Asian Americans Advancing Justice Atlanta. We work with Asian American communities throughout the state, and one of the things that we do is help people register to vote. Some of those people may not have been born as citizens in the United States, but have since become citizens and are registering to vote for the first time. And we just don't believe that this bill is necessary. We believe that the Constitution is already pretty clear on this matter. The Secretary of State's website is very clear. It says to register to vote, you must be a citizen of the U.S. The voter registration forms we use with our new voters are very clear. It says, I swear or affirm, are you a citizen of the United States of America? Check one, yes, no. So we just believe that it's not a necessary measure to go through the whole process of doing a constitutional amendment. In our experience, the laws and processes have been very clear.
Thank you for your input.
Thank you.
It is now time to entertain a motion. I recognize the Senator from Columbia.
Yes, sir. Motion to pass.
Have a motion? Is there a second? Second, Senator Strickland. Any further discussion? Seeing none, those in favor of Senate Resolution 454, LC 472678, indicate with the uplifted hand. All right, thank you. I see 7. And are those opposed?
It's already law.
2. Thank you very much. Motion passes 7-2. Okay. That takes care of the business of the committee as it relates to action that we'll take today. We're going to now move into a hearing. Perhaps a more challenging topic. And I'm going to ask Senator Williams if he will to present SB 367. This is LC 472696, and it is for hearing only. So we will not take any action on this bill this evening. Senator Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. Thank you for the opportunity to present this bill. Some of you know that I served as Chief Registrar of Baldwin County from 1998 for 16 years until I assumed the duties here in the legislature. All of that time, we had drop boxes. A lot of people wasn't aware we had them. They were end of your driveway, or they were at the post office downtown, or before you got to the post office, you could drive right up, and if it was inclement weather, you just stuck your hand out the window and just dropped the ballot right in the mailbox. During COVID, a lot of things happened. And one of them was lessening people's contact with other people. And so these drop boxes were placed outside of buildings so people could just walk up and drop anything and everything in those drop boxes. I've heard of ballots, I've heard of trash, I've heard of Coke cans, and even some contraband maybe being in some of those things. And you know, as Senate Bill 202 came into effect and drop boxes had to be moved into the elections office, what it did, it became kind of the elephant in the corner, so to speak, that all over Georgia, these election officials are sitting there at the desk. Someone walks in with a handful of ballots, or a single ballot, or 2 or 3 ballots. And they go to give them to the person, and the person tells them, you have to put them in that drop box. Why can't I just hand them to you? No, the law, you got to put them in the drop box. Okay, they drop them in the drop box, turn around and leave. That might be 9 o'clock in the morning, and it might be the last day of being able to accept those getting close to the election. And that evening, the people in the elections office opens that drop box and notices there's 4 ballots that have not been signed by the elector. What we got to do? We got to mail those people that you could have had contact with and inspected the ballot like we used to say, wait a minute, this ballot has not been signed. We can't accept it. You need to get it signed. You need to go back and get your husband or wife. It's common sense, ladies and gentlemen, of trying to do the right thing and help people to vote, and so that their ballot counts. You know, several years ago, a lot of you probably are not aware of it, but when it was reported that someone had died to the elections office, we had to send them a letter to the decedent telling them that it's been reported to the elections office that they had died. I swear, we had to do that. Thank goodness the law changed. Common sense prevailed. That law changed. What also happens in that elections office, they are so busy. They are trying to do their other duties, and every morning when they come into that office, they've got to unseal that drop box. Before they unseal it, they have to open it, make sure nothing is in it, nobody's tampered with it. They close it back, then they unseal it so it can be used that day. And it sits there like a knot on a log all day long. Nobody might even come in and put anything in it. But at 5 o'clock that afternoon, the clerk in that office has got to go to that drop box, close it, open it up, count the contents, maybe 0, but they've got to document it and log it. And by the way, 3 people have to do that. Then they close it back and they seal it till the next morning. That's one more step that these overworked, overburdened elections officials are having to do. Since a couple of elections ago, our election officials have been harassed. They've been fussed at. They've been cursed at. Some have even received death threats. We have put so much burden on these people that it's time to, let's go back to common sense and let's take some of the burden off of them. I think I've just about beat this little short bill to death. I'll be glad to take any questions.
Questions for the author? Committee? All right, Senator from the Bill of North Georgia.
Maybe it's a question for the author. The absentee ballots that you receive in the mail from the secretary or from the local elections office, does it have a prepaid postage stamp on it?
No, it does not. But in my town in Milledgeville, the postal people in the post office, they brought the absentee ballots that were mailed in to us. And we had to pay the postage on it.
So they deliver.
They
each of the
delivered
ballots with that.
And we also sent one of our deputy registrars to the local post office on that election day to collect any ballots that might be there.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yes.
Senator from Augusta.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And this actually may be something, since we're just having a hearing only, that possibly the Secretary of State can give. I'm not sure if the author knows this or not, because it may require a lot of information. But how many possible formal complaints have we had about drop boxes to the Secretary of State, and they've turned those over to either the Attorney General or other investigatory arms? And maybe they can bring that information. I know the author may not have that, but would like to know that answer to that information.
We'll make that as a formal request to the Secretary of State and see if they can shed some details about those challenges. Is that fair? Senator from Columbus.
To the author, and I understand your experience, and correct me if I'm wrong. I think drop boxes were not something that you had to work with when you were supervising elections. Is that correct?
That's correct, sir.
So in crafting this legislation, have you spoken to or inquired issues about the drop boxes with individuals in election offices that have to deal with them?
I have. I've spoken to several election officials. Some of your larger, 2 or 3 of your larger counties have reached out to me. They didn't have an issue with it one way or the other. Some of the smaller counties that I've had experience with in my home county, they were glad to get it done. They liked the interaction and to be able to look at the ballot when it was handed to them, so they could check it. Because the procedure used to, whenever someone walked in, we would take that absentee ballot, we would stick it in the date time stamp machine so it was documented date and time it was received after we had inspected to make sure that it had been signed or a mark had been placed on it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you'll bear with me, you were saying 3 individuals had to clear the box.
Whenever you're handling ballots or early voting, there's 3 people in those precincts. And that's for documentation methods that there are 3 people witnessing. 2 people might can collude on something, but the third one's always going to tell on them.
Is that for chain of custody to make
No,
sure?
that's for verification and to make sure as witnesses that everything is done right. During the early voting in the precincts, when people walk in doing early voting, there's people that are witnessing everything. So even there's more than 3 people in there usually, but there has to be at least 3 people so that there's 2 people and a third witness. So, all 3 people could be questioned independently.
So to be clear, if I go down at the end of the day and say I'm in Muskogee County where I have to go downstairs and the drop box is there in the lobby and I seal it, unlock the bottom and there are ballots there, I have to have somebody with me to verify those ballots.
Yes, sir.
And then that I take them upstairs into the day and put them wherever they belong, or?
Well, you would take them into the elections office and they would be into the box and being secure with the other ballots.
Where if the box was not there, then the individuals would be required to come into the main precinct, come upstairs and hand them to a human being.
Yes, sir.
And, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Senator from the 16th.
Yes, sir, to the author. Thank you. Thank you for your experience and expertise in elections. I think that brings a great light, and it also brings trust to the people of Georgia. I think the savings that you're talking about that's there, the signature verification in person when it's done, that all keeps things from having to be repetitive and followed up. The saving of 3 people going to a drop box, all of those things make common sense of using monies and resources that have to be paid for by the taxpayer. And I think it does nothing but increase the confidence level of the voters. And I really appreciate your expertise in that area. Thank you.
Thank you. And some of the other legislation that we've looked at is changing from the probate judge going to your board of elections. And the question has been asked, how are we going to pay for it? How are we going to pay for it? When you can cut out some of the other redundancy and save some labor, then it can be utilized. But thank you.
Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the author of the bill, the current law as we have it now, am I correct that you can only have a drop box at, I know they're limited based on population, if I remember correctly, but the drop box has to be located at an early voting location. And am I right that it can only be open during the hours that early voting is happening? Is that the current law?
Well, it's open as long from 8 to 5, whenever that office is open. For instance, in Baldwin County, when you walk in the Board of Registrars, soon to be Board of Elections, there's a clerk sitting there, but then the drop box is over in the corner. So it's right there. So when you close it, the office is closed.
So if your bill passes and someone has the absentee ballot they don't want to mail, could they still go to that same location and hand that absentee ballot to
They
the
can,
worker?
and that clerk would look at it and say, Mr. Jones, you forgot to sign your ballot. How about sign it? And then it'll make sure that it's going to be counted.
So last question, I remember in previous discussions about this, if I remember right, in 2020, there was no law on drop boxes. And that it was done by rulemaking authority or some other authority. If we just strike the regulation of drop boxes, is there any fear that you could go back to Wild Wild West and just have rulemaking authority or potentially executive orders that allow for drop box in different ways than the current law allows?
Well, that's, I'm sure the gentleman knows of what he speaks. He's a trained counselor.
It was a real question, so. Isn't it true? But okay.
That is true.
Thank you.
Senator from the 2nd.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I know we're talking about election security, and I felt pretty secure knowing that there was going to be 3 people counting, going to the drop box to verify the absentee ballots. But are we saying that striking this will give voters more confidence? Because I'm less confident in the mailman bringing a mail sack of ballots and hand them to one person but no other verification. Because if the mailman come drop off the mailman, he ain't gonna have 3 people to verify the mail he handing over. So how do I feel confident in what the mailman is doing? If I don't trust the election, then I want to be able to come put it in the drop box where I know 3 people gonna be there to count the ballot and make sure it's good. But you got more trust in the mailman handing it to somebody in the mail room than you do going to put it in the drop box. Is that more secure? I'm just trying to understand.
I don't understand that. That's two totally different things. This is, somebody could walk in the door back there, walk up here and I watch them and they drop the ballot in a box over in that corner rather than walk in that door, walk up here and hand it to me. And the example that I gave, I'm able to look at it and say, Mr. Mallow, you forgot to sign your ballot. If you will, how about sign this while you're here so we can count it? So we don't have to send you a letter stating that your ballot has been rejected because it was not signed.
And so that would be the assumption to the author of the bill. The assumption would then be that those who drop their absentee ballots off by using drop boxes are more likely to err than those that mail them in using the post office.
That's not what I've said at all. That's not what I've said at all. What I've said, you can mail it if you want to. Nothing has changed there. You could always mail your ballot. What I'm saying now, you can put it in R2D2 over there, or you can give it to a human and let the human look at it, which the human is going to eventually. And the human eventually could see that you didn't complete your ballot. And by the time we mail you a letter and let you know that your ballot was rejected and send you another ballot, by the time you get that one in the mail, election is over and your ballot didn't count. I'm trying to make sure your ballot counts.
Final question. Could you not pick up the phone and call the voter?
You don't always have the telephone number. You don't always get a person. You don't always get the right number. You can't always reach them by telephone.
Thanks,
I
Senator.
think the code and the Secretary of State can clarify that you cannot call you. It's not stated that you can pick up the phone and call the elector. You have to mail notification to the elector, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
In the instance of, interest of time, this is a discussion, it's a hearing only, and I think that the senator from the second has made his point about how best to secure ballots, whether we use a drop box or whether we use hand delivery or whether we use mail. And I think all those are valid conversations. But for the benefit of this evening, I'd like to move on to public testimony. We do have 10 individuals who would like to express their position on this. We'll welcome that. We will limit input to 3 minutes. If you would, please. By the way, the majority of folks who wish to speak to this bill oppose the bill, and we hear that. But I'd like for them to have a chance to express their positions, and then for the committee, if they choose to ask questions. So we'll start again with individuals who we experienced already this evening. Ms. Lee, are you still with us? We may come back to her while she has her daughter. Ms. Lastinger? Oh, no, here we go. Where's your daughter? Okay, everything okay. Don't leave her out there.
Yeah.
Bring her in.
It's not a good time.
I know,
Okay.
I understand. I understand. No
For
problem.
her. So I apologize again.
No,
and Thank
no
you for your
apologies.
flexibility. So again, my name is Jennifer Lee and I'm the Policy Director at Asian Americans Advancing Justice Atlanta. And we oppose the provisions in SB 367. And for one simple reason is just that we support the freedom for voters to be able to choose which method they return their absentee ballots. So For context, Asian American voters are the racial and ethnic group that use mail-in ballots at the highest rates of any other racial or ethnic group in Georgia. About 10% of Asian American voters prefer to use mail-in ballots.
How do you know that?
We, Asian American voters are also the most likely to have their absentee ballots rejected. And one of the top reasons for that is that it is received past the deadline. And so having the drop boxes does provide an option for our voters to just immediately deposit their ballots and into a drop box and cast their ballots. And again, we support options. You know, like I said, I voted in person on the day of. I voted in early voting in person, and I've used absentee just because absentee might not be your preferred method of voting. It is one that about 10% of Asian American voters use. And so we would prefer to keep that option open for all voters. And for that reason, we also have just seen post SB 202, the reduction in drop boxes really affected Asian American voters. So almost 80% of Asian American voters lived in counties where drop boxes decreased. So it became an option. It was an option that really just drastically reduced. And although it is a limited option at this moment, we would like to keep it for those voters who would like to use the drop boxes. So yes, we support the voter choice so that everyone can vote in the way and return their ballots in the way that they would prefer.
Thank you
Thank
for your
you.
input. You have a question? Senator for the 29th?
Yes.
Right now, the counties have the one drop box, and it's at the location where early voting occurs. And in my largest county and in my smallest county, it is probably, in my smallest county, it's probably 8 feet away from the election worker. And in my largest county, it is 60 feet. So what is preventing the voter that you're concerned with, your constituent, when they walk into that building, instead of walking to their left and putting it in a drop box, walking to their right and handing it to a human being? Does that make, is there a big difference in those two things, you think?
Well, because I think right now we just support obviously the choice, like we said, with parents with young children. Sometimes when you have to go through the process, and I've done this also, if you are, you know, we often, when we're at the polls, we often get a lot of questions just about the absentee drop boxes too. So people might come to the polls and say, oh, can I return it here? Do I have to go somewhere else? And I think that, you know, if we're allowing people to put a mail-in ballot into a mailbox, you know, being able to just put it into a drop box is helpful. I will say, you know, a lot of our voters too, one of the reasons they prefer to use the mail-in ballot system, oftentimes, you know, we see this for like online shopping as well, is they are not as comfortable maybe interacting with someone. They would just want to do something fast and have a seamless process as possible. And so I think we should just support those as seamless options.
So you're not concerned with Chairman Williams' example of an individual coming in at the end of early voting, at the end of the day, putting it in the drop box, later finding an error after the fact and having to reach out, where if they went directly to the right and handed it to a human being, the error could be discovered and corrected at that time? Don't you think that would be better for the voter to know that when they leave, their vote has counted and that their ballot is correct, as opposed to dropping it in the box and then finding out later through a letter beyond the early voting time that there was a mistake on the ballot?
Well, I'm sorry I missed the discussion earlier, but with it, I just support, I think that we support voter choice and options on how they want to vote. And it is, just for context too, I think when we have had something and then we take it away, it also leads to voter confusion. A lot of the problems that we've experienced with our voters too is just that things are changing all the time. So if a drop box was available somewhere and then it's not going to be, it can be confusing for voters. And so we just would like to have expanded access and options as much as possible for voters.
Thank you. I appreciate you, Ms. Lou.
One more question, Senator from Second. No question.
Thank you. I appreciate your presentation talking about the options and choices. But options and choices, would you be in favor? Because I pretty much look at this as ballot freedom. Would you agree that having freedom to decide where to send your ballot by mail, drop box, or handing it to somebody is the best course of option? Because we should just focus on the freedom aspect of the ballot and let people have freedom of ballot and not try to restrict that.
Yes, we support people's freedom to choose how they want to return their ballot, cast their ballot.
Thank you for your input.
Thank you.
Thank you for your input. We'll move now to Ms. Lassinger, ACLU.
Hello again, Rachel Lastinger with ACLU of Georgia and the Voter Access Project. So I'm back up here to now speak in opposition of Senate Bill 367. No matter the intent of the bill authors, SB 367 as written will have a direct and negative impact on voter access. Mail-in ballots are used by many voters for a variety of legitimate reasons, and for some voters due to mobility needs, health needs, or even just work and travel plans. It is the only option. Drop boxes streamline the mail-in voting process and provide a secure and reliable way to return one's mail-in ballot without putting the burden on our U.S. postal workers to deliver the ballot securely and in a timely manner. Drop boxes also have the strength of security through chain of custody paperwork. Election officials do not have to take time away from their many other duties to collect a voter's ballot by hand, but can instead empty out the drop box daily as part of a bipartisan team and file paperwork that tracks the movement of those ballots. Georgia drop boxes are much more durable than a USPS mailbox and are impossible to tamper with, featuring a one-way entrance slot and 24-hour surveillance. In Georgia, there has not been a single proven case of voter fraud via Dropbox, and it has been reported on a national level that there were no instances in which Dropboxes were connected to voter fraud or stolen ballots. I commend Georgia for introducing Dropboxes as a voter access tool in 2020 and making them a secure part of our election. Removing them now would be a regressive step for the state of Georgia. Past legislation already reduced Dropbox usage in 2022 from the estimated 10% of all voters who voted by Dropbox in 2020. Despite these restrictions, though, many voters still rely on Dropboxes as their method of voting. Dropboxes alleviate mail-in voter concerns about ballot tampering, signature exposure, and meeting the postmark deadline so that their vote is eligible to be counted. Of the mail-in ballots that were rejected in the 22 elections, almost a quarter of them were rejected because the ballot was not received in time or the ballot missed the deadline. Drop boxes also allow for voters to have to not wait in long lines at polling places. Drop boxes have been most heavily utilized in metro areas such as the 4 Atlanta metro counties, where more than 50% of voters are people of color, and where we consistently see overburdening polling locations with long lines. Eliminating Dropbox will have a larger impact on these metro area voters. As you know, 39 states utilize Dropboxes, with new states choosing to do so each cycle. Eliminating Dropbox would be a regression for the state of Georgia at a time when we can all agree we should be working to make voting easy, accessible, and safe. Removing Dropboxes sends the wrong message to voters, telling them that the state is working to make it harder, not easier, to cast their ballot.
Thank you for your input. Senator from the 29th.
You mentioned fraud. Would you consider an individual, say they ask for a mail-in ballot, the mail-in ballot comes, they fill it out. On election day, they go to the poll, they drop the mail-in ballot in the drop box, and then they go in to vote. And when they go to vote, they of course show their identification. They said, "We've mailed you a ballot." And they said, "Yes, but I wanted to vote in person." And then they vote in person. In the ACLU's, would you consider that fraud?
So there are procedures to make sure this doesn't happen. There are checks and balances within the system.
Yes, no, I understand. Would you consider that fraud?
It wouldn't be considered fraud because that vote would not be counted twice. There are checks and balances that would
But
avoid that.
that has happened in Georgia, correct?
No, there are checks and
Yes.
balances.
No, I'm sorry. Has it happened in Georgia where somebody?
I do not know the answer.
Okay, thank you. I mean, I know it has. That was the reason I asked. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your input and thank you for your testimony. Would you please convey to Mr. Bruce that we miss his presence? He
will.
has been a voice for ACLU. We're glad that you're here, but just let Mr. Christopher Bruce know that
I will let
we'd
him
be
know.
happy to have him in the committee whenever he finds the opportunity.
Will do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're gonna move forward. I want to acknowledge written testimony from Miss Ashley Hudded. Is that right? But we'll also move now to Miss Monica Brown. We've had Miss Brown testify already from the League of Women Voters of Georgia. Is she here? Yep, still here. Good. Thank you, Dr. Brown.
Once again. So again, my name is Monica Wills Brown with the League of Women Voters. And we definitely support increased voter participation and the elimination of barriers to casting a ballot. And like our colleagues, we definitely are opposed to SB 367, which would directly impact the voters' ability to return an absentee ballot in a timely manner and ensure that their vote is counted. Now, Georgian lives don't conform. I mean, there's so many of us and we vote in different ways. So we don't have a single narrative. And we would appreciate the flexibility to have to vote in a variety of ways, placing times to cast their ballot and protection and participate in elections. Removing absentee ballot drop boxes does not make voters feel or trust elections more. It may make it harder for lawfully registered voters to participate in the elections. A better proposal would be to eliminate the restrictions on the number of drop boxes. And as members of the General Assembly, we hope that you will give the local county board of elections the support they need to conduct elections instead of restricting the tools available to the election office and ultimately, the voter.
Thank you for your input. We'll now hear from Mr. McKinnon. Appreciate you being here. Georgia voting
Georgia values.
value, sorry, Georgia
Happy
value.
to be here
Forgive
as
me.
well. Thank you, Chair. Joey McKinnon with Georgia Values. And again, we work on behalf of Georgia's working families. And again, we take a real narrow focus in regard to election bills like this one, just to simply make sure that voting is accessible so that working families are better represented. So for some of the same reasons we spoke earlier in favor of SB 411, we're opposed to provisions in SB 367. When we talk to our network, what we hear about elections is they should be safe and secure, and they should work practically. Keeping drop boxes fulfills both of these duties by making voting quick and easy for people where that method is the best fit. Working family schedules are stretched thin between rigid work shifts, school schedules, childcare, senior care, traffic. I could go on. Keeping up is a strain. And as a working dad with ailing senior parents with chronic illness, I know all about it. By making voting a more time-consuming, less flexible process that doesn't reflect what some voters need when they can just deposit a ballot as they go down their checklist for the day. And let me tell you, I have a Post-it note with a running list of things to do every day, and I don't get most of them done. But for a lot of working families, you know, that's a thing on that Post-it note that they have to do that day. And that's the easiest way. We can't control voters' work shift schedules, realities of senior care and child care, and so on. But an overworked parent running a day late and dollar short, what we can control is maintaining a substantively secure, practical, and quick voting method, which is drop boxes. Thank you.
A question.
Sure.
Would you feel that a voter who presents themselves in an early voting location with an absentee ballot, should they be allowed to turn it in to a poll worker?
You know, I think that a variety of methods are certainly applicable. I don't know if I'm qualified to tell you like what the best method is, but what I can tell you when we talk to voters, we go door to door, we have a network of families that, and what we hear most often is that just they're not dialed into the shifting sands of election administration. So the changes, you know, the drop boxes are here, they use them. I think what happens is when busy working families, if we're changing things, they kind of just throw their hands up with the process. And that's my concern today.
Thank you for your input.
Thank you.
Ms. Battles. I've got to call out Miss Cindy Battles. Is Miss Battles here? Oh, there she is.
We're so close.
I know, I mean, oh, no cake today, so you have to show. Okay. Miss Battles, we're glad to have you here.
Have a good
People's
day.
Agenda.
Yes, sir. Cindy Battles, Policy Director for the People's Agenda. I'm actually going to take a little bit of a different take than some of the other advocates that have spoken. I'm actually really glad to hear what we were saying when we were up here talking about SB 202. What a number of election supervisors said when they came up here to testify, that the way that SB 202 changed the way we use drop boxes made them not practical. But it makes it kind of sad for me, right? I would argue that if someone walks into the elections office with their absentee ballot and the person who is working behind the counter refuses to take it and says it has to be put in the drop box, I think that's actually a misreading of the statute, because in all honesty, they would have both options, right? They should be able to hand it to the person who's working in the elections office or put it in the drop box. I think what we've made a point here, though, is when SB 202 passed, and we said this narrows voters' ability to cast a ballot, what we were told is that's not true. We've codified drop boxes. We've made this better. We've expanded voting. And now, sitting here listening, it sounds like that's not true. And what we've decided is, since we made them useless, we're just going to get rid of them. I think maybe if you're wanting to do this, if Baldwin County doesn't want to use them, then make it an option for the counties that do, instead of just eliminating them altogether. As a way to continue saying, because I get what you're saying, right? It is really lovely if I can walk into the elections office and hand them my absentee ballot and they can see the mistake that I made. But the reality is, especially in a lot of smaller counties, including Jones County, where they have one full-time worker and one part-time worker, they're so busy, they don't actually look at that ballot to make sure that everything is done correctly right then anyway, because they've got 3 other people in line. So if you want to do something with drop boxes, just make it optional, because for some counties, it actually works. That's all I have.
Thank you. Any questions of the committee? Senator from McDonough.
Quick question. This is not one I know the answer to. I was asking the author earlier if with this current law, though, if we strike that code section altogether from, I think it was from Senate Bill 202, will we not be back under the 2020 state of the law where every county could do it their own way, or there could be some sort of ruling from
It wouldn't be
another office?
It would not actually be the county that could decide that. It would be the state election board.
So I said rule so election board, if this bill passes as it is, the election board have full discretion to drop boxes however they wanted. Is that right?
Yes, if they wanted to make a rule at the assuming that you just strike it out, that you
Right.
don't write something specifically saying drop boxes are eliminated, then the state election board could decide that we could use them again and use them in a way that was done previously.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Just point of clarification, Ms. Battles, if I heard you correctly, you would be supportive of language that would allow the county to remove the drop box, but accept the physical ballot. Is that correct?
Absolutely. I mean, currently in statute, you have to go to the actual election
You have to
office.
go to the election office, you have to go to the early voting area,
Right.
or, yeah, that's
Right.
true.
Exactly.
So if the county chose, they could not have the burden of the management of the drop box, but accept the ballots from the voter. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for your input.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Was there a question? Ms. Battles? Yeah, one more question. Senator from Augusta.
But just to clarify, you were saying that the county would have a choice to still have a drop box, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
sorry.
Just making sure. Thank you.
They could, yeah, exactly. Thank you. All right.
We good? Okay.
We're good. Thank you. Miss Crawford. Natalie Crawford. She's left. Okay, then we're gonna go to Miss Neighbors. Very good. Christine Neighbors, all voting is local.
Yes, my name is Kristen Neighbors. I'm the State Director for All Voting is Local Action. We're a nonpartisan organization that advocates for policies that aid counties in running safe and secure elections. I'm here to speak, of course, about SB 367, which we believe would needlessly cut off an avenue for voter access. Drop boxes, as many others have pointed out, have already been limited to early voting locations during early vote hours, but they do remain an easy way for voters to breeze right past that long line in the early voting site. They're also a great option for anyone who's mentioned, as we talked about earlier, anyone who's nervous about mailing their ballot. I'm particularly thinking about disabled voters who aren't able to physically come to the voting site, but don't feel comfortable dropping their ballot in a mailbox and hoping it arrives on time. Access to drop boxes has already been so reduced by SB 202. I urge you not to pass this bill and remove the option completely.
Thank you for your input.
Questions?
Questions?
Nope.
We're good?
All right.
Thank you. Last input is from Mr. Favorito or Mrs. Favorito, whichever you prefer.
I think both.
Both? Y'all can come at the same time? We'll give you the same amount of time. That's 3 minutes. Because
You did that to us last time.
no.
She's got 3, I got 3.
No. We'll give you 3. It's okay. Now we're gonna focus on
She's got different stuff.
SB 367.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you want to go ahead?
Go ahead. Oh, you want?
Okay, I'm Tamara Favorito with Voter GA, which has been leading the election integrity movement in Georgia for more than 17 years. I support this bill and I want to thank Senator Williams for authoring it. I train poll watchers throughout the state. I have also served as a poll worker and I've attended the county poll worker training. So I know how the poll workers are trained on the drop box issue. And really, because the code allows anyone to put absentee ballots for extended family members into the drop box, the poll workers are told not to challenge it. So I could, because I come from a big family, extended family, I could bring 20 envelopes and put in the ballot box and nobody's going to ask me about it. So really what it boils down to is the fact that people could have big families are serving as a cover for ballot traffickers who can drop a handful down there and nobody is going to mention it to them. We've also heard from all of our poll watchers throughout the state that the poll workers don't even notice the drop box. And as Senator Robertson mentioned, there's some that are 60 feet away from the poll workers. And so that's not going to help them see anything. So I think eliminating the drop boxes as they're currently set up would be very beneficial in eliminating this vulnerability. And I agree with Senator Williams that handing the envelope to a poll manager in a voting location or a worker in the election office who should check to make sure it's signed is much more secure than the drop box. So I would urge this committee to pass this bill. Thank you.
I have a question from the author.
Thank you for your input and your comments. As a clerk is sitting there and someone walks in and they've got several of these and they walk over and they stick them into the drop box, they have no clue whose ballots have just been put into that drop box.
That's right.
You know, there's some neighborhoods that people live close together and somebody could go door to door and I'm going to the elections office to take my ballot. Anybody want me to take theirs? And they gather and have little potluck suppers and stuff. And it's also called ballot harvesting, isn't it?
That's right.
Which is illegal in the state of
Harvesting.
Georgia.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
That's right.
Thank you. All right, now we'll turn to Mr. Favorito.
Okay, I'll be brief. But you're right. This is an improvement to stop ballot trafficking. I haven't heard anybody talk about election integrity who opposes the bill. This is another important feature of this bill. I just wanted to clear up a few things that I heard. The beauty of this is you get 2 or 3 minutes, no matter how educated or uneducated you are about the topic. But I heard some few things talk about chain of custody. And I just wanted to give you a few actual facts from our investigative research that we've been doing for the last 3 years.
As it relates to
As it relates to 367.
Thank you.
There's no provision
that that Secretary of State had to record the number of ballots that the counties received from drop boxes. We did a study. We found that there were missing chain of custody forms for over 107,000 ballots in the 2020 election. We have all the stats for that. There were all types of things. There were unsigned forms from the receipt of them. There were drop boxes picked up in impossible circumstances. Some of them had said they picked them up before the drop box was ever installed or afterwards. In addition, there was estimated missing chain of custody forms for approximately 355,000 ballots in the 2020 election.
I'd remind the testimony, this is about 367 and the elimination potentially of a drop box.
Right. And the chain of custody forms I'm referring to are the Dropbox chain of custody forms, which is what someone testified to earlier, that we had perfect chain of custody. And that's the whole point. We did not have perfect chain of custody.
Do you believe that
on the Dropbox.
eliminating drop boxes would improve that?
Well, absolutely, because it solves the ballot trafficking issue in addition to the convenience. And the only question that I had was, I was not aware, that's great that you can still give that ballot to the county and rather than put it in the drop boxes at the polling location. So that solves any objection that I can see to this piece of legislation. So of course, we would support this and encourage y'all to pass it.
Would you be in favor of proposals that would ask for the individual depositing absentee ballots with the election office to provide standard identification that they would provide if they were to vote in person?
That would be a reasonable thing to do. If you have to have identification to vote in person, you're there. I don't see any problem with that. In fact, I would like to see that you required that the counties accept the ballot to make sure. I think that would overcome a lot of the objections. I'm not sure. Maybe Senator Williams could comment on that if that's actually required now or not. I didn't see that in the last bill version that I saw.
Thank you for your input. Questions from the committee? Any other further questions? Again, thank you for your input. This is hearing only for Senate Bill 367, LC 472696. We'll take no action this evening, but I do appreciate the input and the dialogue, and we'll go to the author to take this input, make necessary adjustments before he returns it to the committee. The hour is late. Those of you who have stuck with us, thank you very much. The time is 6:54, and unless there is objections, meeting's adjourned.